Welcome to the No Rain, No Rainbows podcast. This is a show about pushing through obstacles and hard times in order to live a happy and fulfilled life. I'm your host, Ted Phaeton, and it's a pleasure to have you joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's grow. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to an episode of the No Rain, No Rainbows podcast. It's a pleasure to have you, and as always, big shout out to my executive producer, Andre Subtle Solution, helping make this podcast possible. I'm excited for today's episode because we have the author of this great, amazing, fantastic book, Your Life, Your Career, Your Choice, Danielle, Britt, sitting here with us. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Seriously, it's an honor.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I've had the pleasure of hopping into the subject matter of this book before us sitting down, and I was thankful to do so. I think it's going to be very helpful for our conversation. I'm excited for some of the listeners to get a little bit of a glimpse into your life story. But before we kind of pull back the curtains and go back, let's first introduce you to our listeners so they can know who you are and what it is you do.
My name is Danielle Britt, and I am a lot more than an author of Your Life, Your Career, Your Choice. I am an entrepreneur and an investor, and I work with small businesses on their marketing, advertising, business development, and just become essentially a business consultant. I also am a co-owner of a bar, Gizmo Bar in downtown Greenville. So I like to stay busy and keep my hands in a lot of different things. And now I'm trying podcasts.
Yeah.
So.
And you're doing amazing so far.
Thanks,
I love that.
Thank you.
Which, speaking of Gizmo Bar, I've known of it, just saw it for the first time. That's where you can get your phone fixed, correct?
Correct.
While grabbing a drink.
Absolutely. Which brings in like my IT nerdy side, right? You're able to go in, and they actually have 6 interactive screens so that you can play games, you can build a car, you can, we're working on the process of being able to order from the bar itself. But yeah, if you need to get your cell phone repaired, then you can go drop it off or have lunch with us and have a drink. That's
awesome. Well, I love that concept, and I know a lot of the listeners are going to kind of think, how do I get there, right? How do I get to a point where I can invest in a bar or have a concept or an idea and have it come to fruition? That's the end game, or not even the end game, because I think our journey still continues. It's
Absolutely.
Never really over. But let's go back to the beginning, and I know you come from very humble beginnings, Tennessee area, and you mentioned that in the book. It all started at a trailer park, correct?
It did, yes.
Talk about that upbringing and how that influenced your vision for your life, because you do reference that vision for your life in the book, which I love the imagery that you have in the writing. So that really does a good job of bringing the reader into the place. But I guess talk about how those humble beginnings helped propel you to the life that you're currently pushing for and continuing to work for.
Of course. So growing up, I feel like my dad worked as hard as he could. Neither one of my parents finished high school or had educations. So we say trailer park, and I remember prior to what you would consider as official as a trailer park, which to me sounds like a lot wealthier than what I had as a child, like sleeping in this house that was broken up. And I remember being able to see through the walls, and just when it would rain, literally getting the boxes from the outside of the porch and bringing them in the house. So a trailer park to me was actually an upgrade from my, childhood, or the infant stage. And then being in the trailer park and seeing my dad work all the time, and seeing my parents argue constantly about money, and just not having, a real, what I would call a real relationship now that I'm an adult and I understand that. So that, and then if you kind of fast forward a little bit, and in the first chapter of my book, I'm talking about I was 11 years old, and I had 2 brothers, and my youngest brother had left with my dad, and my oldest brother had left with my mom, and I'd been left at home to clean the house essentially, and just got done cleaning the house. And I remember looking out of the front of the window and just looking across the yard, looking across the road and at the trees, and just thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be more to life than my parents arguing all the time, and us not having money and not being able to take money to school to get school lunches and having free lunches. Although now as an adult, I am so thankful that we have a government that offered those free lunches, because coming from where I come from, there were definitely days that I went to school and could not wait to get there to hopefully get breakfast. And if I missed the bus, then that meant that I didn't get breakfast. So very thankful at this point in my life, now that I'm an adult and I understand that our government did offer those essentials to us. But I just remember like looking out the window and thinking there's got to be more to life than this. And I remember picturing myself being in a business suit, and I said, I will be successful one day. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew that no matter what, I was going to try my darndest to not allow myself to fail.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think a lot of people find themselves in a position where they think to themselves that there has to be more to life than this. There has to be more than this mundane. And I know you reference it later on in the book where you mention life becoming almost habitual and just repetitive. And it's just like, okay, there has to be more than just me waking up, grinding, going to this. Or, for you to have that thought at such a young age, I think it shows on the maturity that you had, and whether that maturity was forced upon you or it was something that was innate in you. That's for you to know. I mean that's a question way above my head, but to have that maturity in the moment and think, okay, there is more to life than this, and then the decision to aspire to it. I think a lot of us can see it, but we don't ever really aspire to it. And
Agreed.
That's where the difference comes. And I do love the fact that you have a lot of the action steps and things that people can actually do to start working towards that. Because you mentioned, hey, write it down, go for it,
Yes.
and then be clear on what it is you want. I think a lot of people get lost in life and they don't know which direction they're going in. And when you're not living a life by design, you're living a life by someone else's design.
Absolutely.
And that can definitely put you in a position where you don't control where you are. I want to talk a little bit down the line now. And speaking of, you can't see what you can't aspire to what you can't see. Without giving too much subject matter of the book away,
Sure.
You end up getting into a position where you start seeing and becoming surrounded by people where you find the ideals and some of the things that you want. How is that transformative to your growth and propelling you into your future?
That's a really great question. And I guess I would elaborate a little bit on the last statement. It's we all, at some point in our life, get into a place to where we want to be something more, and we're just not sure how to get there. And for me, as this kind of goes into the next question, I was always at 11 years old, and once I had that image in my mind, I was always looking for other opportunities. I was watching people that would come around our house. We constantly had people in and out. And then I was invited to a church service, and started noticing the people there and started noticing how they dressed and how they acted. And I always say that we all get a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's whether or not that we are aware enough of our desires and our intentions to be able to capitalize on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I had one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities from a family who just kind of took me in under their wing. And I didn't really know them. I knew that I didn't have like as nice as clothes as they did and their kids did, but I just thought if I could understand or just get in their car, if I could just get them to go to lunch with me or take me to lunch, not go to lunch with me, take me to lunch, then maybe at some point, maybe I can be on their level. And just being cognizant of that. And they ended up later on in the book, certain things happened in my life, and they ended up giving me an opportunity to be able to live with them. And I'm trying not to give too much of the book away.
I know. And one of the questions I ask a lot on the podcast is, what's one of the biggest storms you've been through that gives you confidence in taking on the storms in your future? And in reading the book, I think you've been through a few of them. I guess I would ask, which storm at a young age do you think really kind of stuck with you the most?
This is evident. The first thing was my dad had been abusive to my mom, and she would never call the police or anything. And neighbors ended up calling the police, and we ended up going to the hospital, and my mom had to get some stitches, and that night we had to go to a safe house. So that moment, which was one of the biggest storms, was when I walked in, and I was so hungry that there was a buggy full of loaves of bread. I'm guessing that a grocery store somebody had donated because they were out of date. And I remember walking in and smelling the bread. To this day, I can still smell it, right? And I remember my mom talking to the lady because she's got 3 kids, and they're trying to make sure they have beds for us because it's cots, right? We're staying in a safe house. And my mom's back was turned, and I went and I ripped open the loaf of bread, and I grabbed 2 pieces out and stuck them in my pocket, and I went and told my mom I was going to the bathroom. And in that moment, I felt guilty, and I was, I don't know, probably, I'm not exactly sure how old I was, but I was young enough to where I knew that I did something wrong. I had stolen something, but I was so hungry, and I constantly go back to that. Whenever I sense failure in my life, or whenever I sense that I'm not going to succeed, I immediately revert back to like that memory, just thinking, Danielle, I've had several other experiences, as you've seen in the book, but that's one of the experiences that I just constantly go back to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your story is a true no rain, no rainbow story. And that specific story that you just told, I know was not in the book. So I was thankful that you shared that with us and the listeners. That way they know that they can kind of get more of the context and where that happened. But fast forwarding through some of the middle of the subject matter to a lot of I want to say the elements that you touch on in the book is very relative to this podcast with No Rain, No Rainbows, and very relative to what I think a lot of the listeners and a lot of us go through on a daily life in terms of having to find value within ourselves and having to come up with the courage to take that risk or just take that jump into something new. And that's something that you experienced personally in your move to South Carolina from Tennessee. What was that experience like? What was the trigger that made you say, you know what?
I'm done.
I'm going.
It was so scary. I'm not gonna lie. It's any time that we take risk, whether it's with a relationship or a new job or going to the gym, or hiring a personal trainer, whatever, it's a risk, and it's so scary. But I learned to love myself at a young age, and not that I don't always love myself, but I learned that, like, Danielle, you have to think for yourself, and you have to go after whatever it is that you want. And I don't want for me to ever pass away and regret. I don't want to be, because I've lost parents and at a young age, I don't want to be that person that's on my deathbed and think, man, if I would have just done this, if I would have just taken that risk, I might not succeed, and I'm probably going to fail over and over and over. Michael Jordan's quote, not going to say it, but it's in my book. We're going to fail over and over and over, but if we don't take that risk, I would rather fail and try than to never have tried at all. So that moment in in Tennessee, I was sitting there and I was making good money. I had a car, and I'd rented a trailer. So for only like 3 months, right? And I'm like, I feel like I'm doing great, right? But then I'm like going to my trailer, and I'm like, there's got to be more to life than this.
Yeah,
there has to be. Like, I'm not just gonna stay here. I'm just gonna travel to some places, and I'm gonna see what else is out there. Came to South Carolina, and I loved that it was a bigger city than where I came from. I liked the diversity, and I'd traveled quite a bit before coming here, and I felt like it was a big city within a small space, and just applied for a job. And there's the stories in the book about kind of how I just took the leap of faith, and I came, and I don't regret it. I love Greenville. I love being here now, and I'm so thankful that I did it. But that doesn't mean that I had a lot of failures in that process or after moving here. But the only person that you can rely on is yourself. And
yeah. And I love you do a lot of, you reference a lot of in terms of relationships with people and things like that. And that makes the risk a lot easier. It makes the jump a lot easier when you treat everybody in a very special, unique way. And when I say that, it's, and you mentioned it in the book, and I've said it before on the podcast, is, you can learn something from everyone, everybody has their own struggles. So
Absolutely.
you can't walk around being resentful or being nasty towards people. You want to lean into people and invest in people, because you never know the kind of reciprocity that can deliver down the line. So when you're just a good general person, and I'll be honest, 90% of the time, the people you give the blessings to are not the ones who bless you back.
Exactly. 100% agree.
So it's great to see that you were able to take that leap and take that jump and move forward. And I want to take this opportunity to talk to listeners directly, because a lot of us get pigeonholed in that position where we are. One of my favorite quotes is, your dreams are waiting for you in the winds of the sky.
Yeah.
And you ask, what if I fall? But oh my darling, what if you fly? And a lot of times, 90% of the things we worry about don't happen.
Yeah.
And we spend so much energy and so much time worrying and preparing and getting worried. Listen, I have car insurance. That's as far as my worry about getting into an accident goes.
Right? Exactly. Great. That's a great analogy. Yes.
Yeah. You can prepare for the worst. I'm not telling folks, I'm not advising them to be reckless. You can prepare for the worst, but expect and hope for the best, and put yourself in the best position. And when you have that opportunity, go for it, because 10 years from now, you can't open that door again.
I agree. And I'd like to elaborate a little bit, if I may, about, being open to talking to other people. I think a big misconception of people that meet me is that I'm this huge extrovert. I do have a lot of energy and I love people, but I just taught myself to walk up to people and talk to them. That doesn't mean that I'm not nervous. That doesn't mean that I'm not afraid of rejection or that they may not include me in the conversation. I just want to talk to people. I just want to get to know people, because I learned at a young age that getting to know people and opening your mind and not being closed-minded and listening to other people's backgrounds and understanding where they come from, that has taught me so much. And it has opened my mind to so many different things that I'm so thankful for. I mean, I still ask questions to people all the time, because there's so much more that I can learn, and I can improve in so many more ways. And the only way I'm going to do that is by putting myself out there.
Yeah.
It's like, so I love that you made that statement. I love that quote. I'm going to have to adopt that.
Go ahead. Sure. I don't remember who said it specifically, so you'd have to maybe find out who to give the credit to the proper person, because I didn't come up with it.
Yeah, I love it, though. That's great, though.
Yeah, I do want to give credit and mention your work ethic that you reference in the book, because speaking of the leap of faith, and speaking of your journey moving to Greenville, South Carolina, and something I experienced moving from New York to Michigan to Greenville, South Carolina as well, moving to a new city doesn't scare me anymore. And what also doesn't scare me anymore is starting over. And you were in a position that you mentioned in the book of really having to kind of pick up those, I mentioned from a poem, pick up the worn out tools and build again. And you had to kind of build up, and you had to rely on your work ethic to do so. How important is it for folks to have that base, that work ethic behind them when they're trying to build a new life?
Extremely important. I know that, I say it's, a lot of people understand and they see that I have great work ethic, but that doesn't mean that there aren't days that I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I don't really want to go to work today. But it's a decision, and like I talk about in like the first or second chapter of my book, that we make a decision and we set goals and we get up every single day and we go to work and we strive to be whatever it is that we want to be. And work ethic is obviously one of those things, and just desire to, I always say live your life with intention. So if you want a better house, or if you potentially, you want a nicer truck or whatever, pick up a second job. I mean, I was not too prideful when I moved here. I'd never been a waitress in my life, and I was working as a marketing manager, and I needed more money. And I went to the manager and was like, can I be a waitress? And she was like, I'd been a waitress in a small little mom and pop shop. And she was like, well, we actually need somebody. When can you start? And I was like, I'll spend my lunch break learning the system. Like, I don't care. I just need money. Like, I need to make it any way that I can make it. So I think that is extremely important, but it's more so of your mindset. It's also the work ethic. That's good, but you have to have the mindset to be able to encourage yourself and get the head trash out, because you're going to go to the interview and you're going to know that you don't have some of the qualifications that they say that they want you to have in the job description. But you have to go in there and you have to sell yourself. And then when you get the opportunity, you work your ass off and you prove yourself, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's 100% what I've done. I've definitely applied for jobs that I was like, yeah, I don't know if I could do this. I know like 70% of this, but I know if they give me the chance, I'm going to prove myself. And I think that's what they saw in me. And I kept getting the opportunities.
I think that's a perfect segue into kind of as we transition towards the rainbows and whatnot. And this is, I hope you don't mind, because I do want to reference this that was in the book, because you just kind of referenced it about the time you asked for a raise.
Yep.
And you just told folks, you know, regardless of what you think, and just to kind of put into light to I guess, accentuate the point that you just made, me right now being a morning anchor in Greenville, South Carolina, that was not in the plan 4 years ago. Yeah. I was a meteorologist. And when the offer for me to be a morning anchor came to me, that job position required 5 years of anchoring. That job position, there were people in the building that had more experience than I did in that.
That's
anchoring.
Awesome, yeah.
But I did display the ability, the adaptability, the work ethic, the confidence to make that transition that I was lucky enough to have the opportunity. So I agree 100%. I personally don't pay attention to the experience requirements or job requirements, because I have the confidence that I have the cognitive ability and the confidence to learn.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna say I know how to do it already.
Right, exactly.
But I can learn.
I love it.
And I can pull it off. But I'd love for you to reference that really quick in terms of how you rose above that and what folks can maybe pull from that example on how they can adapt that to their lives.
That's a great, that's good feedback and follow up, by the way. That was one of the hardest things was, you know, I feel like I'd worked so hard for this guy, and, you know, he came after me while I was already working for the company. He proposed a position which would make more money to me. So I was like, oh, okay, like he's obviously going to pay me more. And then, you know, when I go to him and I prove that I've saved this company all this money, and I literally remember getting there before the sun come up and being there before this or after the sun went down, and I'm thinking I am living in this place, which is fine because I'm okay to sacrifice. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be poor. So when he told me no, I was so defeated. I just thought, you know, here I am, like I'm doing everything that I feel like I could possibly do, and he's saying no, you don't have a college degree. And I just thought, you know what? I am not letting you defeat me. I am not letting you steal my rainbow. Yeah. I'm not. And so I went back to my desk and I applied for some other jobs, and within just a few weeks ended up getting a job making 25% more money, because like we all have head trash, and I didn't allow the head trash to consume me. Did it get me? Absolutely. I'm human, right? Like, did it upset me? Did I feel defeated? Did I get back to my desk and did I want to cry? 100%. But I decided in that moment, I'm not going to let him win. Yeah. So, yes, I'm so proud of myself for doing that, because
I'm proud of you too.
That ended up taking me to a whole nother level in my career that I never knew would have ever been possible. Mm-hmm. But had I been like, you know what? All right, he's right. You know, I don't deserve this job, or I don't deserve a raise. But I would probably still be sitting in that desk doing the same job 10 years later, making the same amount of money. Yeah. And I feel like anybody who is listening, like, if you can apply yourself, you are more than that. You are worth more than that. And don't ever allow anybody to tell you or define what your worth is. That's not for them to decide. That's for you to decide. Yeah. If you believe in yourself, then just go after it. Do it.
100%. I love that you did that, because, like you mentioned, within 2 weeks, having the ability to make 25% more, his loss.
Yes.
You gave him the opportunity to keep you. And I want the listeners to understand that it's okay. And actually, I'm going to be quoting a good friend of ours, Andre's here, Dr. Ray, when he says, you know, it's okay to increase the value it is to access you. It is okay to increase your value.
I like that.
And a lot of people like, you know, well, I agreed to this salary and they said no, so I'm going to stay here. No, if you increase your skill set and you know your value, it's okay to up the price.
Absolutely.
And as we continue to progress and grow, I think it's only natural that we up the price as time goes on.
Yeah.
What are some of, I guess, the ambitious goals now that you're chasing as you've been able to experience a certain amount of success through your career, through your life, And obviously, I know you mentioned before, we're never done.
Never. No.
So I guess what are some of the things you're working on? I know you just finished the book, which congratulations on all that. And I know a lot of folks have been purchasing it. I'm definitely going to have in the show notes for folks to purchase that book. But I'd love to hear some of the projects you're working on now, some of the rainbows that you're currently chasing.
Okay, thank you. I'm working on the second edition of my book. As you had mentioned, there's stories that I did not disclose in the book because it was actually harder than I thought to be so vulnerable in this book and expose myself so much, because people, they only see this Danielle, right? They don't see this Danielle. So I'm working on a second edition. Also working on a consulting company. So I just submitted for the LLC yesterday. Nice. And then I'm also working with a group of incredible women on a nonprofit. So my goal now is to work in an industry, create my own industry, to be able to give back. I want to be able to help companies, and for me, consulting is being able to use my experience and what I've learned in my corporate life to be able to give back to small businesses that are just starting, and then also nonprofits to be able to give back to. There's so many amazing organizations in Greenville to be able to, for us, that I feel like a lot of people just don't know about. Yeah. So my goal is to get the word out a lot more, and I've actually been talking to WSPA, maybe Fox, but talking to WSPA Kenneth about some things. We had a great meeting last week, and he's incredibly excited about all the things that I have presented to him. So things are just in the work. I'm just,
nice,
working toward them.
Always pushing forward. I can't wait for you to experience those rainbows.
Thank you.
What's the biggest thing you've learned from being vulnerable through the book? I'd love to get that, because you mentioned how hard it was to be vulnerable. And Andre's in here working on his book. I have a book in the back of my head that I haven't started working on, which everyone keeps pushing me to do.
You should do it, yeah.
But that vulnerability, if I'm being honest and vulnerable right now on the podcast, is that vulnerability scares me. And knowing that if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to have to pour into it and open my heart into it. I guess, what was that experience like, and what did you learn from that process?
It was harder than I thought, because when you're becoming vulnerable, you're actually allowing yourself to relive and feel. And sometimes you're allowing yourself to heal with experiences that maybe you've never healed with before. So being able to take my mind back to hard times and feel those pains again, and say, you know what, there's some closure that I haven't, there's some things I don't have closure on in this area. And it feels good. It feels really good. It's still scary when people come up to me and, I was at Wild Wings this past weekend, and this guy comes up, oh my goodness, I didn't know you were an author. I really want you to sign my book. And I immediately get nervous, because I'm just like, oh my goodness, he knows so much about me. You know what I mean? But it's also very humbling when people say, Danielle, I've read your book. I had to put it down because it brought up so many things about my past, and you encourage me and you motivate me to want to be a better person. And if I help one person, because I'm vulnerable, like you, Teddy, if you help one person, and Andre, by writing your book, then it's worth it. It costs a little bit of money, and there's a little bit of investment in the beginning, but at the end of the day, helping other people is what are we here for? Yeah. If we're not giving back and we're not using our experiences to help other people, then how selfish are we? Yeah. So I am so thankful that I did. It was so scary. There were a lot of tears sometimes, but that's okay. It's okay to have those feelings, and I'm so thankful that I did it. I've got so much more to learn, but I'm very thankful. So I encourage anybody who has a story and they feel like they need to share it, just do it. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for putting your story in the book, and you mentioned reliving some of those experiences, and I can tell you, reading the book, I was rolling my eyes with you at times. I was at times I was kind of reacting to your story with you throughout it. I can honestly say that. So I do appreciate you being vulnerable and opening that up, because I heard a great quote someone was talking about. It was a gentleman who's been through a lot of hardships in his life, and suicidal attempts and things like that. And then he turned his life around and started, speaking to others. And he would get these messages on how people are like, you saved my life with your story. You saved my life with your story.
Absolutely.
And he ended up saying, he's like, the pain I went through wasn't for me. The pain I went through was so I can help them. And it's really the purpose of No Rain, No Rainbows. The purpose of this podcast is for anybody that's listening or watching on our YouTube channel, whatever you're going through, whatever rain you're experiencing right now, you're not the only one to go through that storm. And there's a community out there for someone who can help you, somebody who can reach out and pull you out of the rain into the sunshine that you very well have, and the rainbows you very much deserve. So I appreciate you putting that all into the book. I'd love for our listeners to have an opportunity to get the book and connect with you more. How can they follow a lot of the work that you're doing and maybe even get their hands on the second version when it's done too?
Absolutely. So I have a page on Facebook, Your Life, Your Career Choice. I have a Facebook page, Danielle, Britt, and then Instagram as well. Your Life, Your Choice, or Your Life, Your Career Choice. And then on Amazon is where we have the book now. I'm in the process of creating my own website. So I guess I should have said that earlier, that the books will be available on. But if you follow me on my current pages, then you'll see that.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to have those links in the show notes for everyone listening that on the Apple podcast or the Apple app right now. Open up the app and they can just hit the links and it'll take them right to
Thank
that.
you.
So make sure that they have good access to that. The name of the book, Your Life, Your Career, Your Choice, by Danielle, Britt. Danielle, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. To the listeners and the watchers on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. I know you enjoyed this podcast, so I don't blame you for stopping it and going back to the beginning and playing this again, because there's so much value to be had from it. And just to recap some of the things that Danielle said along the way, like there's got to be more to life than this. I think that's something that we've all thought, and you even mentioned that we all get to a point where we want something more in life. It's okay to want more in life. I think a lot of times we stay humble, and that humility is good, but you also want to mix that humility with the confidence, knowing that you are worthy and you are deserving of more than where you are right now. And Danielle has the steps in the book for you to go ahead and start chasing those dreams. I learned to love myself. When you said that, I had to write that down right away, because that's a process that I go through myself, and I think a lot of us go through. I always say, hey, fall in love with your Kool-Aid flavor, and everyone else will drink it.
Yes.
So I think a lot of our listeners will get value from that. And work ethic is good, but you have to have the mindset. If money went to the hardest working people in the world, your father would have been rich. My parents would have been rich. And the coal miners, the single mothers, there's so many people that would be rich if it just came down to hard work. The work ethic is good, but you have to have the mindset and be able to apply it along the way. So you could do so by reaching out to folks like Danielle and be more than happy to answer any emails or questions that come into our podcast. So those are some of the tidbits that I've gotten, and I know our listeners probably got a lot more. And of course, just if you did enjoy this episode, I'd love for you guys to share this with a friend that you think can value from it. If you enjoyed the content, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button if you're on YouTube, and be sure to tune in every Wednesday as we have a new episode. And if you didn't know, we have a Patreon page where you can support the podcast for as little as $1 a month, and that's where we have some extra content. We have a little extra audio from Danielle there as well that will be posted, and we appreciate the support there, so don't forget to check that out. But until next time, guys, like we always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain, but you can't get the pleasure without a little pain. Let's grow. The No Rain, No Rainbows podcast is recorded at Camaraderie, a collective workspace in Greenville, South Carolina, right off the Swamp Rabbit Trail. If you're looking for a place to grow your business, network with other professionals, and establish your own workspace, Camaraderie is the place to do so.